Hello, Judith.
Hi, Josh.
How are you doing today, Judith?
Why don't I hear you? That could be my
Might be.
speaker settings.
Looks like I got one. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's me. What'll happen for some unknown reason, my audio will just mute itself internally in the computer. So I have to go into the computer system and
Got it. It's always something.
yes. Yes.
Well, how have your past few weeks been?
Well, it was going well. And then last week, as I noted in my little comment, I got sidetracked. So I feel it's amazing how even a short time can make you feel very distant from the project, but maybe that's a good thing. I'm going to get back into it today in our working group. I did look at your article. You mentioned the 90-day framework. So I just went into my calendar and set out some goals for the next 30, 60, and 90 days. I don't think it'll take me that long. So much of the content is done. It's just that it's not in story form or a narrative form. You know, it's teaching stuff I've been teaching for a long time. So creating the narratives around it is what's going to take the time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw an article this morning off topic. Hello.
Hello, Sophie.
Hi.
And hello, Warren. Jumping in there. Can't hear us yet. There. Hello, Warren.
Hi there.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Warren and Sophie, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in just a second. Judith was just telling me something, though. She was in the middle of a thought right when you popped on. So let her finish.
I was done with, thank you. I was done with my writing thought. I just was going to mention that I saw an article this morning in the New York Times about a heat wave in Arizona coming that they're anticipating. Are you in Phoenix?
I'm in the Phoenix area. And yes, we have a heat wave. It starts every year at about April or May, and it goes until about October.
Right. So apparently this year they're expecting something greater. And
I've seen the headline, that they're expecting it to be even higher. I don't know what that looks like, because normal here during the summer is 115 to 120 degrees. I mean, not 120, but it gets up to 118 or something. So if it hits 120, that would be amazing. But 118 and 120, I mean, it's not that big of a difference. And so I'm not looking forward to it. I hope our air conditioning continues to work. But
send cooling thoughts your way.
Thank you. Yeah, but we'll be using the ice maker a lot, and the air conditioning will hold up, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all I thought of you when I saw that headline. And I know quite a few people actually in your area. It's tough. That's tough.
It's tough. I mean, I used to live in Rexburg, Idaho, though, and it's cold there. It's just the opposite. Up in Rexburg, you don't go out of the house for 7 or 8 months of the year because it's too cold. Here in Arizona, you don't go outside for 4 months because it's too hot. It's just opposites. Well, Warren, tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the group.
Oh, thanks. And by the way, my father used to live in Carefree, Arizona, if you know Carefree.
I don't know Carefree. I know Surprise. I know Snowflake. We have a lot of unique names of cities.
Yeah. It's fun little place. So anyhow, so I call myself the luckiest business person alive. And it's just because I was born in Columbus, Ohio. My grandfather was a professor at Ohio State, and his colleague was a guy named Everett Rogers. And Everett Rogers developed that bell curve and the term called early adopter.
Oh,
And so I grew up, going to conferences with my grandfather, learning all about how people adopt new innovations.
so Jeffrey Moore stole the stuff from Everett, huh?
He stole it from me, actually.
Okay.
Uh, and there's basically back in, let's see, it was 1989. I was talking with my colleague about the idea of a gap in the Everett Rogers curve, and I said, there's really a gap in here, and we called it a chasm. And I worked with Jeff Moore, right? He was one of my colleagues, and he was writing a book, and we said, hey, Jeff, you ought to put a chasm in the technology adoption lifecycle. And he goes, what's that? So we tried to teach him what a chasm was in the innovation adoption curve. And he made a lot of mistakes. In fact, I just did a research project. I went out and looked at the 250 most popular articles that describe the chasm concept, and they all have serious errors, many serious errors. So that was the mistake of my life, really, was giving my framework to someone else.
This happens. This sometimes happens, right? I remember I was in Hong Kong several years ago, and I was listening to a speaker speaking to a group of Chinese people about personal branding and putting themselves out there. And that's not really the Asian way of doing things culturally, right? You're humble and you don't put yourself out there so much. And he said, well, if you don't do it, some American's going to come along and do it. And sometimes people run away with these ideas, and maybe they're a better showman than some of us who are more technologists or engineers behind the scenes. But the showmen tend to run away with this stuff sometimes.
Yep. And
that's fascinating, though, because Jeff Moore, I love the book Crossing the Chasm. It was assigned to me in college 20 years ago, and I read it and I thought, well, this is fantastic. I was into marketing, and I thought this is all about marketing. And so I've thought about that concept over and over and over again, thousands of times, as I've worked within my marketing agency. And so it's fascinating to hear that you were at the root of that.
Yep, exactly. And I apologize. I should, I can turn my camera on for a second. I had oral surgery, so I've got a funny looking thing in my mouth, but I'll just show you this really fast. And all right. And here I am. Okay, so I'm going to show you the original manuscript. Let's see if I can get this to
there we go.
So there it is. This is the original manuscript of Crossing the Chasm. And these are all of the errors. These are all of the places that I said, no, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. And he did not fix them.
That is so interesting.
Okay. And that's why we have, now I'm going to turn my camera back off. And that's why there is massive misunderstanding and mistakes. And I tried to outline that on LinkedIn just a few months ago. I can send you the article.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, because I want to know what I've been teaching people all these years that may or may not be fully correct.
Yeah,
that would be interesting. That is, boy, it's a small world. It's so interesting.
Yes, it is.
That's fascinating. Well, Sophie, are you still with us there?
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I actually came like a couple of weeks ago. I think it may have been already like a month ago. And then I wanted to come the past couple of weeks, but the times just didn't work out. So I actually have to hop off in like 20 minutes, but I just wanted to come anyway. So hi, I'm Sophie, and I shared last time that I'm interested in writing a book, and my book, it will be like a collection of poems, but little writings that I guess kind of capture just things that women go through in their 20s, in 30s, where it's just part of life growing up. A lot things, what happens with relationships, things that you learn, things that you have realizations as your parents get older, and just a lot of things that you never learn officially from someone, but everyone goes through their own version of it. And it's equally amazing, but at times equally lonely or painful. And you choose either to kind of go through it or avoid it. And then you learn, it's your journey of how you want to experience your experience. So I have a lot of different pieces of writing that are just on my phone. And I think getting it out is the nerve-wracking part. And because I've never considered myself like a writer or an author, aspiring to be an author, it's just kind of flowing out. And I guess I was very interested in finding a community of people who are just like, I want to write a book. And it's like, it's not something that, I don't know, it's just something that your gut feeling is kind of leaning towards. And you don't sometimes understand why, because it's not something that you may have imagined when you're like younger. So that's just where I am.
Got it. And I do remember you from before. I don't know if you had your camera on before. I don't recognize your face, but now that you mention it, I remember your name. So
yeah, I was working from home and I was in my full PJs, but today I'm like going out properly dressed.
gotcha. Well, you're free to show up here any way you want. So where are you at with the book? I mean, you said you have some notes, you have some things written down. Is there anything in particular that's getting you in your way, or that you're stuck on, or that you have questions about?
I think just prioritization. Like, I think right now I just physically moved from one state to another, and I'm just going through a lot of a transition that I'm placing a lot of different things, work and just everything more important than this. And when I find a pocket of time to rest, I'm finding myself just kind of like overwhelmed. So I'm just like doing things that aren't productive, like going on like a YouTube shorts binge or like watching Korean drama. So yeah, it's slow in coming, but I guess even showing up today is my way of trying to mentally recommit towards the progress of this. I think I'm kind of in like a 75% complete situation where the foundation's there, the writing's there. It's more about polishing it and putting it together into like a more cohesive theme, flow. So how I'm imagining it is I've been writing this since my early 20s, and now I'm like about to turn 30 this year. So it's kind of like almost like a decade full of the different up and down journeys I've been through. And then, yeah, I think just kind of finding a way where I'm not overthinking to try to connect with so many people first, but trying to share it from my perspective that I have intended is what I'm trying to reground myself on. And because I'm also very visual, and a lot of my early 20s background came from doing more creative direction and that sort, there's kind of like this inner desire and kind of almost like a sense of pride that I want this not to be just a writing, but I want to demonstrate like all the things that I can do and like pair it with something visual, photography, illustrations. But I'm taking it to even that step. I think that's going to push back actually finishing together this, because I know I'm going to be so nitpicky about the visual aiding illustrations is going to be like another project. So yeah, just trying to find a way how I want to wrap this up and feeling good with it is what I'm trying to work on right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know how it is to get distracted by the YouTube shorts and reels and all that stuff. So when you think about working on your book, do you feel like the challenge is making the time to do it? Or do you feel like even if you made the time, then you'd be like, well, but then I'm stuck on this part of it. I don't know what to do next or something. Is it the time or is it the actual book?
You know, I think it might be the actual book because it's so personal. It's not something that I've ever written to try to release. It's just something that I've kind of gone in a circle to keep convincing myself that this doesn't need to be for the outside eyes. And then, but it's just this weird inner thing where I'm just like, but I think a lot of people are going through this, and it could be an opportunity to connect with so many peers or even friends who have gone through this.
Mhm.
Truthfully, the past couple of years have been so crazy. I moved. My parents are actually, compared to my friends, my parents are a lot older. They had me when they're older. So that transition of taking care of them and kind of trying to snap out of trying to act like a kid, but I'm still a kid mentally. A lot of transitions have happened within a very short 4 years, where I haven't even gotten a chance to connect with some of my best friends of what's going on. Because when they ask, what's up or how's it going, it's such a loaded question of like, oh, I feel like I've like lived 4 different lives, like in between this short span of like 4 years, and I don't even know how to sum up what's been going on. And it's not bad. It's growth, but I guess this book is like a very raw, hey, this is how I've been doing. It's my first time of sharing. I've actually been off of social media for quite some time. I used to be very active. Everyone used to know what's going on. I used to be very social, and then something happened within the past couple of years where just life hit, and I've been really dead quiet. So sharing what I've been up to and these poems that are very personal I'm very private, and I'm a cautious person. So I think putting it out to the universe, I feel like I'm probably making reasons in the back of my mind to kind of delay this process because it's pretty scary.
Well, I think we may have talked about this before, that you can break your book up into multiple stages where you say, I'm writing this book and I'm just writing it for me first, and then I'll make a decision as to whether I'm going to let anybody else see this. And for some people, that makes it easier. It takes some of the pressure off because they're not constantly thinking, oh, how are my friends going to see this? How is the world going to see this? You're just telling yourself, nobody else is going to see this. It's just me. It's just my book. Nobody else is going to see it. And then once you finish it, then you say, okay, now let's talk or think about other people seeing it. Is that a help? Do you feel like that would be a helpful paradigm shift for you in terms of
Yes.
writing it?
Yes. Yeah, I'm writing it down actually.
So I went through a similar process over the past 2 years or so. In 2019, we adopted our daughter from China, and she was 14. She's now going on 18. So 4 years ago, we adopted her from China. But it was a 10-year journey to adopt her. From the moment we said we're going to do this until we actually got her, it was pushing 9 or 10 years. And along the way, I always thought I should turn this into a book. And the more it went on, the more things happened, the more I thought I've got to write a book about this someday. And so when I started writing it, I thought, well, gee, like, who else cares about my family and what we went through adopting this girl? Like, that's just my family story or my personal story. I don't know anybody's going to read this. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, maybe this would be really fascinating for other people. Maybe other people will be interested in it. But I just kind of tucked that away and I said, you know what, I'm going to write this first for my daughter. I want her to know the story of how this all came about, because she didn't know that we were working on this adoption for most of her life when we were working on it. She was over in China. She had no idea we existed. And then we just showed up one day and got her. And so I thought, I want to write this book for her so she knows everything that went on behind the scenes. And someday she can read that and get into the details of it. And then I thought, well, I also want this for my other kids someday so that they can read it and see it from my perspective. And so I just kind of kept it private as I was writing it. And then I finished my first draft, and now I'm going back and editing it. And now I'm thinking like, okay, maybe I will publish this. Maybe I will put it out to the world. But I didn't really think about that until I had finished that first draft. And I feel like that helped me relax and just get the personal stuff out there, because in my mind, I was thinking, nobody else has to see this. I can cut this out. Maybe I'm telling too much. Maybe I'm getting too personal, and I can cut that out before it goes. But I just didn't worry about that stuff because it was just for me and my daughter at first.
Thank you for the tip. I could already, as you were speaking and as you shared that kind of perspective shift, I think it kind of like mentally unlocked a little bit, and I start to get internally re-excited about the direction I want to take this. I think, so I used to live in LA, and it was very hustle and bustle, and everyone's kind of competing, and I know that people are dying to kind of, not that the world centers about me. I don't think I'm that interesting, but I went to a friend's wedding recently, and I know that I haven't talked to like some in a decade and some in half a decade. And I know that they were very curious about, so what are you up to? Because I was so off of social media, and I know that everyone else is still very active. And that's how everyone kind of, keeps tabs or figures out what everyone's up to. And so I kept it also still private because I just felt like it's just something that I wanted to keep to myself. But for sure, like if I were to post this or release this anywhere, it would be kind of like, so this is what I've been up to. And I think what I'm probably in my mind making this release bigger than what it has to be. And it is drifting off from the purpose of why I wanted to create it anyway, which is it was for myself. It was just a way to share, I don't know, just to put on paper the experiences that I'm experiencing it, and kind of like consoling my own self. Like, no one will know this journey you've been through, but it mattered, and it can matter to you. And it doesn't have to be so like, wow, and amazing to other people, but it's important to you. So thank you for sharing that tip.
And you never know where it might go. You write something for yourself, and then the next thing you know, people are interested in it. If you've, every memoir is somebody's individual story. And often the memoirs are of people who are kind of normal people, and maybe they've had a few interesting, weird things happen to them or something, but they're not necessarily, the Bill Gates of the world or Elon Musk or something. Like, we don't have to be world famous in order to write a memoir and have it touch a nerve with people. It's just all about that human side and people connecting with the humanity in your memoir and seeing something of themselves in it. I really enjoyed I don't know if you've read Tara Westover's memoir called Educated, but she did have kind of a crazy upbringing, but she's just kind of a farm girl from a small town in Idaho. And you wouldn't think that would be fascinating, but it's just the way she writes, the way she tells her story. It's really interesting. And apparently a lot of other people think so too. So who knows? But we don't want to put that kind of pressure on you just yet. So, well, great. Sophie, I know you have to go in just a few minutes. Did you have any other questions or anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I feel good. I think just knowing that there's a community of people who are kind of in similar stages or around the similar stages of wanting to put something out. And I think just being around a community of people who are making the time and care to put out a book. I just wanted to be surrounded by that energy, because it's tough to do it by yourself. And then I think my mind just kind of goes towards unproductive ways. And I think just being part of this call recenters me and gets me on to the right path. So thank you.
I hope you keep coming back.
Yeah.
Well, Karen, have you been with us before, Karen?
I have not. This is
First
my
time?
time. Yes, it's nice to actually put a sound of your voice to the name that I've seen on LinkedIn for so long.
Well, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I was a filmmaker for a long time, while also spending about a decade in content marketing and PR. but I've always loved writing primarily. And when I was laid off in December, I took several months off to write the first draft of a book idea that I've had for a really long time. And it was a very rewarding experience. I was working with a coach at that time, and it was just a lovely experience. But in the past few months, as I've been job searching, I've kind of lost the creativity a little bit. And so when I saw that you were offering free book coaching, I thought it'd be a wonderful way to just at least on a weekly basis tap into that again and continue working on the now 3 books that I've started this year. The craziness that's happening. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Cool. And I just look you up on LinkedIn and I recognize you now. So I know who you are. So welcome, and tell us about the 3 books.
Okay. The one that I wrote a first draft of is based on a short story that I wrote years ago. And it is, and thematically, it's an exploration of post 9/11 millennial trauma that takes place over the course of 25 years or so. And it is kind of a, I guess, fiction leaning in more towards women's fiction. And it's a romance about 2 characters who meet under interesting circumstances post 9/11, and they have to kind of deal with their issues as their romance blossoms. And the other one, I'm very big on romance. The other one is just a fun novel. It's called How I Learned to Embrace the Smut, and it is a memoir style novel about my love of romance novels and how I've learned so much about life and love and storytelling from reading these books, and people should appreciate what they offer a lot more than they do. And then the third one is a book of supernatural short stories, kind of born out of a lot of the trauma that I dealt with during the pandemic, and just isolation, all this different stuff. And finally, my love of all things paranormal and horror and romance kind of just blended in several different short stories. So that's the one I've been writing most recently, because the other 2, the 9/11 one is going to take a long time to finish, and I'm okay with that. And the other one will probably be much quicker, but sometimes sometimes I prefer to write fiction.
Cool. So which of these books, is one of them a priority, or which one do you think you'll finish first?
I thought it was going to be the 9/11 one, but definitely not. There's so much more I want to put into that one, because it's such a tough subject, and I want to make sure that I'm doing it justice. So most likely one of the other 2. I'm further along in, I guess, the short stories, because I'm actually physically writing right now on that one. The other one is more in the outlining phase and kind of trying to find my voice, trying to find the particular audience that's right for that piece. So most likely the short stories is the one that I will finish by the end of the year, and the other ones will come when they come.
All right. Well, do you have any questions today? Anything that we can help you out with? Bearing in mind that I don't know anything about romance writing or that genre, but I know a lot about self-publishing generally, but if we get specific into romance, I'm like, no, sorry.
Not the genre. That's fine. I write such a mixture of different things that for me, sometimes it's just helpful to ask really general questions of other authors and writers. I think my biggest question is, obviously, there's a lot on my plate. There's a lot on everybody's plate. How do you find the discipline to write daily? That kind of structure, the structure that keeps you writing consistently and progressing consistently. What are your habits? That's my question.
Well, that's a great question. And I think it's different I know it's different for different people. Some people really love writing in the morning. Some people love writing in the evening or late at night. What's worked for me, and this is just me because everybody has to figure out what works for them. I don't write well in the afternoon or evening. I find that my brain's already tired and kind of fried by that point. And the last thing I feel like doing is thinking deeply and writing and trying to figure that stuff out. So I have to write in the morning. And also I feel like when I write in the morning, I can check it off and feel good the rest of the day, because I'm like, at least I got my writing done. And what I've found is, for me, I try to reserve a minimum amount of time, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, a half hour, an hour. I try not to make it very long, like longer than an hour, because then it feels like too much. It feels like such a big chunk. But I find what happens if I just reserve 15 minutes and I say, I'm going to work on my book 15 minutes every day or 5 days a week. If I start working on those 15 minutes, sometimes I'm really feeling good. And then I'll go for like 5 hours. And I'm just like, I'm just going to keep on writing because it's just flowing and it feels so good and I'm having a great time. And other times I get the 15 minutes in, or I get 5 minutes in and I'm like, ugh, no, I hate this. I'm done. But at least I touch it every day. And if I can just touch it every day, some of the days I get a lot done. Usually what happens is I'll average like an hour or something. And I've been shocked when I just get an hour in every day. You think, oh, an hour a day, that's going to take you a year to write a book. I've been amazed at what I've been able to do in a month or 2 months with just an hour a day. I'll end up writing hundreds of pages during that time. So that's what works for me. I was watching an interview of, I think it was Neil Gaiman, talking about how he writes. And he said that he has a writing area, like a desk that he has, no computer, no phone. And he goes and he just has a commitment that he's going to sit at that desk every day, but he doesn't say that he has to write. He says, my only commitment is to go sit at that desk for an hour. And I can sit there and think, I can do research, I can write, but I can't do anything else. I'm not allowed to do anything else but sit at that desk and think or write or do research for the writing. And he said, when I do that, typically the thoughts come and I end up writing, because writing's better usually than just sitting there. But he said, sometimes I just sit there and have a good think. And so that's what works for him. But there's so many different people with different systems that work for them. It's really a matter of experimenting until you find the thing that works for you. But sometimes it's just a matter of buckling down and making the commitment and saying, I'm going to do this every day, or at least Monday through Friday. I'm going to do this. I'm going to set aside this time, mark it on the calendar, not let anything else take that spot. And I'm going to sit there and I'm going to work on my book, or at least touch it, work on the cover design, work on the marketing, or something to do with that book.
Yeah, no, that's definitely helpful. I think my biggest struggle sometimes is blocking off too much time. And when you hit the nail on the head when you said that, because in my head, I'm like, oh, I will spend these 3 hours working, but then when those 3 hours come, it feels like an insurmountable task to complete everything that I want to complete in those 3 hours. So I think blocking off even just an hour a day of my time would be super helpful in the morning. Definitely. But yeah, no, that's helpful.
Now, something that really helps is to also have an accountability buddy, somebody you write with, which is, we started doing this just a month or 2 ago, where we have this call right now, this Q&A call, but at the hour we switch over into just a time to work together. So we stay on Zoom. You can turn your camera off, everybody mutes themselves, and we just sit here and we work together on our book. And maybe I've gotten more out of that than anybody else, because just since we started doing that 2 months ago, I finished one of my books that I've been trying to finish for a year and a half. And it wouldn't have happened except that we had this accountability time. And there were days where I was like, I need to go do this other thing. I want to work on something else. But I had to sit here, especially since I'm running the group. And so there were people watching me. And I was like, well, I got to work on the book because we're here. And so I worked on the book for an hour. And with just a few hours over the past 2 months, I finished this book. And I'm like, oh, that is so nice. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the accountability from this group.
That's great. Yeah, I'm excited for that hour.
So that can help too. And I know people who will get together in groups, just friends or something, and they get together once a week, or they get together a couple of times a week just to work on their books. And they have a commitment to not talk and not visit. They just sit there and they work on their books together, just to kind of keep tabs on everybody. And sometimes it's just that little bit of extra accountability that makes the difference between writing and not writing.
definitely. That's a good point. I love that. Great. Thank you, Josh.
Cool. Karen, any other questions or anything else you want to talk about?
For this week, just enjoying the community.
All right, great. Lacey, welcome back.
Hey, Josh. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah.
Mine is more so PR. I mean, I have two titles in the Amazon Kindle space. And I have a because Amazon handles what the authors get versus what they get because they do it the way that they do. My other 7 titles are self-published, just through my own site. But I have 2 titles on Amazon, but one that's been close to my heart for so long that now my I wrote this when my daughter was like small, and now she's grown and now she's a mom. But I'm just ushering all this stuff out before I come out this body, and mine is really like a social media question as far as Carol Roth. Are you familiar with her?
Yeah. I know Carol. I've interviewed her before for my podcast. She's great.
She is. In her, on her blog, she has like once a month, or well, really now lately it's been like once every other month. She has this community where she'll let them deposit their 2 cents on any given business subject or small business subject or whatever. And I know she got her start via a children's book. And I'm thinking, let me, go that route. And I remember studying some of your former content when you talked about like, how you would respond to a journalist's tweet, like, how you would phrase your reach out to them in such a way that they would respond. So I've just been, revisiting that and studying that. And I'm just wondering if you have any updates as far as, how to do that, because all the stuff that, all the PDFs and printouts that I have, even though it's, I stay on current lists, like on like Cision and PR platforms like that, it still seems like it's old hat. So I was just wondering if you have anything that still works for you now. And I know you're long established, but just anything that you have for someone who isn't.
Sure. Well, so tell me, you're looking for PR for children's books or for your other books, or?
Well, I wanted to appeal to Carol that way. Again, that's how she got her start. She got her toe in the door through a children's title. So yeah.
Okay. So, well, let's talk about PR generally, because there are some new tools I've come across lately that have been really handy, and I've frankly been surprised at how well some of these work. I'm going to share my screen here, and I hope this is big enough for everybody. If it's too small, if my resolution's too high, let me know. So this website is called Turkle. It's turkle.io. And basically, well, let me show you. It's easier if I just show you what it is. But it's a website where you can get free PR, to put it simply.
You mentioned that on Facebook, and I pitched one and I was used once, and I used that mention on my website.
Cool.
So yeah, thank you.
So you can do 3 of these per month for free. With a free account, you can answer 3 questions. And I've been testing this out for myself, for one of my company, actually for multiple of my companies. And I've got like a 90% hit rate. That is 90% of the questions I answer, my answer ends up in the article or the blog post. And some of these are blog posts, but a lot of these, I mean, here we've got Fast Company right here, like that's a major top publication. Some of these have limitations, like this WP Carey School of Business. You actually have to be an alum from the school to respond to that. So that's not super helpful for most people, unless you're an alum of that school. Some of these are blogs that you may have never heard of. Like most of you probably haven't heard of Grit Daily. My friend actually happens to run it, so I know it. But There are a lot of good publications on here, and there are a lot of good blogs that have decent readerships. I mean, like HubSpot is a company and you think, oh, it's
Oh,
just a
yeah.
blog, but I mean, HubSpot's
HubSpot is
huge.
huge. Yeah.
And so getting published on HubSpot, it might not necessarily be the type of logo you would put on your website to say, hey, I was seen in HubSpot, the way that you might say I was seen in Forbes or Entrepreneur Fast Company. But still, in terms of readers going to that article and then clicking
It's
through
trusted.
to
Yeah.
you, yeah, it's huge. So, and I have specifically seen questions here related to children's books. Let's just do a search. I mean, right there, who's one of the best children's booksellers? Like, I don't actually know what that question is asking, but that's, I mean, that has to do with children's books. And I've been in here other times where there were 4 or 5 questions specifically related to children's books. And so if you're trying to build your personal brand as a children's book author, even if you don't have a children's book out yet, you can still be answering these questions so that your name is out there in these blog posts and articles that have to do with children's books. And then when you get your children's book out there, you already have a bunch of publicity that's out there pointing back to your website.
Yeah, because
So
when I released it back in 2012, it was it was nothing burger. And so but basically it was clear I did the whole thing myself, including, going on Fiverr, paying someone to do the cover and the back illustrations and the illustrations throughout the book. So now I want to find, I'm working on finding someone not on Fiverr but more advanced, that can, give it more respect, because it's an important book. It's about how, when, like the Charlie Brown cartoon, the focus was on the children. The adults were like an afterthought, and you could hear them, but you never saw them, and this book was written in the same vein, that you could see the parents, like their pants legs, or their feet and their shoes, or their hand gestures, but the focus was the children. And so it's just a very important book. It's still close to my heart, and I'm just rushing out all this stuff that God has blessed me with. And I just want to rush all this stuff out. Not treat it as a rush, but um, I don't know how much longer that I'll be here. So, everything just feels like a big push to me. That's all.
Well, we hope you're here for a long time. Let me just, my wife is a book editor, but she's also a children's book author. I'm just going to put her email address there in the chat. If you want to reach out to her and just get her take on your book idea or anything, like, I'm sure she'd be happy to take a quick look at it. And I don't want to push her services, but she's available for hire if you need a children's book editor or somebody to take a deeper dive on it. But if you wanted to just send it over and get her quick take on it, I'm sure she'd be happy to do that and just give you her 2 cents on it, if that is something that would be helpful.
Got it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate this. I really do. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you back in the group, Lacey. It's been a little while. Warren, let's get back to you. Did you have any specific questions you came here with today that we can help you out with?
Yeah, I do have a question. I've downloaded the workbook that you provided and was looking at it, and I look at the sequence of activities, and if I understand it correctly, it says establish some thought leadership system and promote your book actually before you write your book. All right. Well, in the world of high tech, and especially, market strategy and go to market, activities, anything you say in advance is immediately stolen. And people just put their words, their name on it, and then take whatever you've created, and they're out calling it theirs. So how do you develop thought leadership and protect your ideas at the same time?
I would still say that the cost of putting it out there, even if people steal it, is less than the benefit that you get from putting it out there. And if anything, if you put it out there in a way that is, I mean, if you put it out in a blog post, a video, or something that sticks up, a YouTube video that's going to be there, you can always point back to them and be like, hey, I had this first, here's where it was published. And you increase the likelihood that people are going to cite it rather than steal it. I know there are exceptions where there are downsides to publishing before you're fully ready to go. But I think in 99% of the cases, the evidence is that you're going to benefit way more by putting it out there than by holding it close to your vest. Now, maybe you're one of those exceptional circumstances where the rule doesn't apply, but that's what I've seen generally, is that putting it out there almost always creates a win versus a loss.
Okay. All right. Well, it feels like a little bit of a gamble, just because there are so many things that are offered as new ideas, and days later, it comes out from other people with different labels. And it's kind of a high-tech trend, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, though, I mean, if you don't publish it, somebody else might just come up with the idea independently, and then you've got nothing on record showing that you put it out there first.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, if you had put the chasm and crossing the chasm out in a blog post way back in the day, I think before there were blogs, but if you had published something about it back in the day, then you could at least have that that claim out there, you know, a record of it showing like, hey, I had this before Jeff stole it from me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then my only other question is, other than Turkle, do you have other tools that you use for visibility?
There are a lot. There are other tools that are similar in some ways. For example, you may have heard about Help a Reporter Out. Have you heard of this tool before?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. So this one's great just for everybody. You can sign up as a source or a journalist, but we're talking about signing up as a source. You can sign up as a source, and then you get emails saying, hey, here's this journalist writing an article about XYZ, and they need somebody who's an expert to comment on it. And you can respond to that. I've used this from both sides, both as a journalist and as a source. And their killer functionality is they have a ton of people on this, both journalists as well as sources, 1 million people as sources, 75,000 journalists and bloggers. It's just been around for so long that everybody knows about it. And so there are great opportunities on here. I've gotten into some top publications as a result of being a source on here. And I know lots of people who have gotten into big places as well through this. So the downside of this is that you end up getting 3 emails every single day, and you end up getting tired of looking at all the emails, and then you quit. But if you can keep the discipline to look at it, there are gems here in terms of opportunities. So there's that, of course. As far as other tools, there are other websites that are similar to Turkle or similar to Help a Reporter Out. But after those 2 tools, I would go straight to just pitching relevant journalists. And that's a whole other can of worms in terms of how to pitch them. But that's what I would be doing, is going straight to the journalists and saying, hey, I'm available as a source. This is my expertise. And do you need any help on any of the articles you're writing? And we could talk a lot more about that, but those are the 3 top ways that I would go about PR: Turkle, Haro, and then pitching directly.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Anything else I can help you with, Warren?
No, I can send you that link if you're interested in all of the mistakes that are made.
I would love to see it.
Okay, so I'm going to just put it into the chat, and
Cool.
there it is.
All right. I'm opening it up. I'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Yep.
Is this your website, High Tech Strategies, or?
It is. Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, when you have a nice website like this, and just so everybody else can see it, when you have a nice website like this, when you're going back to the question of, do you publish stuff or do you keep it secret? But when you have a reputable website and you have a place to put your content, I would definitely err on the side of sharing it here. And because I really feel like it plants that stake. It's your claim to say, I published this and here's the date that I published it on. And so if anybody else comes out with this afterwards, anybody can go back and see that I had it first.
Yeah.
I see you got Clayton Christensen there, just how we were talking about stealing. I had a funny experience. I actually met Clayton Christensen in 1997, and then I had never heard of him before, but he became a hero of mine. I read all of his books and thought he was this genius, and then which I think he is still. But then I read one of Peter Drucker's books and I thought, wait a second, this Peter Drucker guy ripped off all of Clayton Christensen's stuff. And then I thought, wait a second, Peter Drucker died like decades before Clayton Christensen wrote his first book. So actually it went the other way around, I guess. Clayton Christensen was building on the shoulders of Drucker, but I was surprised how much of Christensen's work actually went back to Drucker. Anyway.
Yep. And that's kind of the way things often work is someone has the fundamental idea, but they don't successfully communicate in a way that people just, they get it, they resonate with it. And then someone else comes along, builds on it a little bit, and they're much better at communicating. So
yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah. Lacey, I saw you raise your hand. Did you have a comment?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I did that out of excitement because of course you beat me to it because for Warren to not necessarily hold everything so close to the chest.
Yeah.
I did that for decades, and I no longer hide the names to protect the not so innocent. But Gary V's social media person, Rocky, if you go into I forget what option it is. If you're on Instagram, if you go into a certain option in your settings, it shows you which of your followers has, hit your post, has viewed your post or whatever. And for years, I would see these old notifications that she was visiting like my old posts no sooner than I jumped on Instagram back in the day. And I'm like, huh. And it's like, Rocky so-and-so, she liked this post. I'm like, why is she liking the same post? And then I started going through her content. And of course, it's not like I have a license on any particular word or anything. But one of my gifts, and this name was gifted to me by a client, one of my superpowers is crazy phraseology. And so again, I may not have a license on any particular word, but I do have a style and I have an identifiable flavor per my client. So for Warren, I wish I would have pumped enough brain power to, like you said, Josh, tweet it out, make a social media post, and that way it's dated, it's proof that is your stake on the ground. And I wish I did that, but I'm going to start doing that going forward.
All right. As Gary says, document the process. Well, great. Judith, did you have more that you wanted to talk about today?
No, I've enjoyed listening and learning. This is great. I mean, I'm definitely in the camp of putting information out where, nothing any of us ever says is new in truth. So much of what is going into my book was identified by Marcus Aurelius thousands of years ago. The reality is different people hear different voices in different formats. Your audience finds you, they resonate with you, they don't resonate with somebody else saying the same thing. It's really important if we have something to say it. The people who appreciate it will grow and learn, and the people who don't will just turn away and go somewhere else. So I think it is super important. And to Lacey, by the way, there is phraseology that you can have protected. So you might want to talk to counsel about that. If you have something that's unique.
I'll look at that. Thank you.
My lawyer brain.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to follow you.
But take a look at Counsel for Creators on Instagram. They can help. They work with creators. And their focus is on protecting creators, content, protecting creators, products, whether they're film or photos or writing. Counsel for Creators.
I'm on it.
Check them out. They post wonderful reels almost, several times a week. They're very informative. Great.
Before we transition over into our working session, I talk in the workbook about this concept of a hero book, or finding a book that you can use as a template or a pattern to follow for your own book. Not that you copy the content of the book, but it's a guide. You look at this book and you think, oh, I really like the way they laid out these chapters, or I like the way this person writes. And whenever you have questions about how to write your book, you can go back to that hero book. One of the clients I'm working with, I've been working with him for almost 2 years on his book. I'm ghostwriting his book. And he just came to me and said, I finally found my hero book. And it's this book, which you may have heard of. It's called Outlive by Peter Attia. It just came out. It's become a huge bestseller. It's about living longer and living better. He's a doctor, and a lot of health advice, nutrition, exercise, and such. But my client is writing a book about entrepreneurship and business. And he said, I want to write Peter Attia's book, but I want to write it for entrepreneurship rather than for the human body. My book is about health and nutrition for businesses, whereas his book is health and nutrition for the human body. And so that has given me a very clear framework for how to put together all the information that my client and I have been collecting, but not quite knowing exactly how to arrange. But when he said, this is really what I want, it made it very clear, okay, that's how we're going to arrange the information. So if you can find that hero book, I find it to be a real shortcut to getting your book done, because you have that template that you can follow, that pattern you can follow. And you don't have to feel bad about copying anything, because you're not really copying anything. You're just being inspired by the shape of that book and how it's put together. So just wanted to share that. All right. If anybody has any last questions, we can dive into that. Otherwise, we're going to switch over into our working session for those who want to stick around and work together on our books.
Just a quick thing on the Facebook page that you have. You had posted a thing earlier today about a seminar for TED Talks.
Yes.
So I signed up for that, and it says that the date for that is May of 2021.
Let me thank you. Let me email Caesar and let him know that he's got the date wrong on that page.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm glad that you caught that. But I will.
I'm not on Facebook, so do you mind telling me when that TED Talk?
Sure. I'll put the link in here. So Cesar Cervantes is a friend of mine, and he helps people get into TEDx talks. He has a community that he coaches on that. And so I've done a TEDx talk, and he wanted me to come in and do a webinar with him to talk about PR and building your personal brand. And so we're going to do this webinar together on how to give a TEDx talk, and it'll be both of us talking. Let's see. Okay, here's the link. Yeah, on the front, it says the right date, but then, like you said, when you go in, apparently it doesn't. So,
thank you.
first. Okay. Thank you, Warren. I just sent him a note, so he'll get that fixed. Hopefully
Okay.
before my mass email goes out tomorrow to my whole list. So I'm glad
Yeah.
I posted it on social media first and somebody caught that.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions before we go into our working session? And again, if you need to drop off, there's no commitment here. You don't owe us anything. You don't have to stay around, but if it's helpful for you, then we can work together on our books. All good? All right. Well, I'm going to go on mute and I'll keep the video on. If you do have questions that come up during this working session, you're more than welcome to go off mute and interrupt and say, hey, I just thought of something, and ask the question or say something that you thought of. Otherwise, we'll just work here for the next hour on our books. And then at the end of the hour, I'll go off mute and I'll close things up. So I'll put myself on mute, but I can still hear you if you want to talk.